Hey folks, gotta show you this cool coffin case. Look at that. Washburn, what's inside? It's almost as exciting as an unboxing video, isn't it? It's an uncasing video. Well, I've been waiting for one of these for a long time. This is the Washburn R314KK Parlour, done in the old style. Some of the features on this are 1890, go back that far. For instance, the inlays on there are from much earlier vintage Washburn models. So's the headstock shape with the vintage tuners with white plastic buttons. Here's the spruce top with a antique, I don't know if they call this antique violin or just a dark varnish, but it is spruce, not mahogany. There's the inlay, sort of a southwestern style with the abalone on the inside, and same on the edging, white edging. And here we get the lovely back on this, which is I believe a matte rosewood. Yeah, it looks like it. All satin or matte finished. Look at the bridge. This also is from their antique models from the beginning of the century. So really interesting sort of throwback parlor by Washburn. Here's the back, by the way, with the back seam and the back also edging, if it'll focus there. So what they've done is they've reconfigured a parlor based on earlier principles. I think some of it goes back as far as 1895. The bridge, I can't remember if it's the bridge or the fretboard, is around 1899. If that's not the case, I will put it in the description below. This is a V-neck, much like the guitars of this period. You can see the shape there with the volute, the very, very subtle volute section down here. All with this sort of dark finish. I'd probably prefer a more natural finish because I like spruce and cedar. So I would probably prefer that. How does it sound? Well, much like a parlor. Not much depth. It's very bright. It's very articulate. And the thing about this guitar, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, it's a 12 fret guitar, 12 frets to the body. And also, it is a wider fretboard. For all of you people who are always telling me, look, don't knock my need for a wider fretboard. This is not the standard 11/16 fretboard. This is wider, probably 1 3/4. So if you're looking for a cool vintage style guitar, shorter scale I should say, with a wider fretboard and a V-neck profile neck, this is the one. Of course it's made with a truss rod, unlike the very early versions of this model or its predecessors that were not made with truss rods. And when you find them, they almost always need neck resets, if you can find them. This one, of course, they've modernized some of it. It's got modern X bracing, ladder bracing in the bottom, traditional cross bracing, I should say. It's a really cool throwback looking guitar, and with that sort of coffin style case that it comes with, you get the whole thing as if you were going back to the early parts, the latter part of the 19th century, early 20th. Very much that sort of feel. And absolutely a parlor guitar, the kind of guitar you'd play in a parlor or on a porch. It really rings. Has a lot of sustain actually. But it's that smaller, sweeter, slightly tighter sound. You can play it all day. It's really ringy, chimey. It's got that bright sustain, a softer, quieter sound than a big dreadnought. Less low end, of course, but this will play in also. It's brand new, and I think that tightness that you're hearing will darken a little bit over time as you play this in. So that's something else about these guitars. You should always factor in a year or two of just playing the thing before you get what's going to settle down and be its sound. Something that all guitarists should be aware of. That's why a lot of people like to buy used. They like to buy guitars that have already been played in, have already settled down, and you kind of bypass that bedding in period that all instruments need. Anyway, this is the Washburn RR314KK. This is quite desirable. A lot of people look for this actual model, or there are some very similar variations of this from Washburn, and Washburn is still synonymous with the parlor guitar. It's still considered one of the forefronts of this particular style of guitar, and a lot of other guitar makers have sort of copied, or at least paid homage to these early Washburn guitars from the early part of last century. But why not just get the company that actually did it, or one of the companies that did it? Good question. If you like this dark antique finish, violin finish, whatever they're calling it, there are also variations on that as well. If you want colored versions of this, I think Recording King does pretty much these specs, or close to, with painted finishes. So you know, this has stirred a lot of interest in the parlor world of guitars. I don't quite like it as much as my James Nelligan parlor, I have to be honest, but I do like it, and I do think that it's going to be a good guitar once it's been played and it settles down a little bit. It's a bit bright for my tastes, but it does have really nice sustain, natural sustain on this guitar. The notes really ring. So there you go. There's my take on this particular Washburn Parlour. And this is the, I think they call this the Vintage Series or the Antique Series, one of those things. So it is definitely looking back to a bygone era of smaller, sweeter sounding guitars that weren't supposed to overpower orchestras. That's why the bigger guitars were finally invented. These are very much small setting. They're not concert guitars, so they're for you know, small groups to be played at home or to be played in small rooms, houses, that kind of thing. All right, folks, I'll quit waffling. See you on the next one.